Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Amy. I'm an online teacher and I teach live online lessons, groups, one-to-one classes. Today, I'm going to give you a little review of what we've been learning about in our Gothic fiction lessons. A lot of children have been learning about Gothic fiction with me over the last couple of weeks. So if you are one of them, then maybe you might see something today that you missed because you weren't in the class, or maybe something that you didn't understand fully and you can go over it. Okay, right, I'm going to share my screen with you now. So this is just kind of just off the cuff. I'm not going to edit this video or anything, just to show you what we did. Okay, so we started a new topic, Gothic fiction, and we looked at two pictures that were pretty Gothic, and the children brainstormed words that it made them think of. We looked at two in a little bit more depth, and then we also looked at some titles of famous Gothic novels. Over here, Rebecca, we go on to look at the opening in the next couple of lessons. And these are kind of more for younger readers. So if children wanted to go to the library and find a Gothic book, here are some. Okay, so the basics then about Gothic fiction. We talked about this word macabre. We talked about our hero generally being isolated and alone, a little bit about the history and a bit about the settings. And we focused in on one particular town and its history of, obviously it was part of the setting of Dracula. So yeah, it's got lots of Gothic buildings. We talked about that, some more keywords. Then we had a little go of a little quiz. We talked briefly about kind of goth culture, and the children talked about people that they'd seen kind of in this styles and movies they'd seen with this style as well. And then the children had to write a sentence to say what their understanding of Gothic is. And then the more able had a challenge to use the word sinister or macabre in their description. We moved on to look at this happy chappy, Edgar Allan Poe. We talked about his life, and the children had to answer a true or false question and give evidence for that answer. We focused in on one of his poems, which is called The Raven, and this is a little synopsis of what the poem is about. And we read the first stanza, and we looked at some more complex words. We talked about how Edgar Allan Poe has created a Gothic atmosphere. So the children had to identify the words that create a Gothic mood and then extend their writing and say why that word is Gothic, how it makes them feel, how it changes the mood and the atmosphere. And then if we did all that, then we did a little true or false quiz about Gothic fiction. So the children had to write a statement about Gothic fiction, which could be true or wildly wrong. And then we made it into a true or false quiz. Okay, so that was the first one pretty much. I'm going to share with you this one. Okay, so we started off this lesson looking at some keywords and deciphering whether we thought that they were dystopian, which was our unit that we looked at prior to Gothic, or whether we think they are Gothic words, or if we think they are both. And the important thing here was that children had to defend their opinion. They had to say why they thought that. So we had words like vampire, darkness, kind of could be both. Futuristic, decay, supernatural, all of these kinds of things. So if you are doing this now, you could have a go of maybe writing down a couple of these words and explaining why you think they fit the dystopian setting, the dystopian fiction or Gothic fiction. Reminded ourselves about these. Don't forget, guys, you can pause the video at any time to do any of the work or read anything. We read a very short kind of introduction, talked about how it was kind of gave a Gothic atmosphere. And then the main thing we looked at in this lesson was semantic field. I'm not going to go through all the meanings now, but we looked at this. We talked about which words fitted the overall theme. So here we have barked, clenched, growled, which would fit the kind of dog theme. We looked at a few more of those. We made a definition. And then we read a little kind of slightly more complex couple of paragraphs. And the children had to do these things down the side. identify the semantic field, which is linked to warfare, many of them found. And then our activity was to, I'll go on to this side for actually, was to use this short paragraph, and some of them were able to incorporate a semantic field into this. Other children chose to rewrite it to make it a dystopian setting, or rewrite it to make it a Gothic setting. So careful word choice here. There was lots of success with that, was great. Some children who weren't able to access that, and they continued on with their version of this story that we had at the beginning. And then this was kind of generally about the third lesson, I think. We looked at fairy tales and we linked it to Gothic fiction. So the children had to come up with as many fairy tales as they could in 1 minute. Here are some examples of what they came up with. And we discussed fairy tales and we talked about how they kind of already are quite Gothic, and some of the features, which are these. We talked about Brothers Grimm and how they travelled around Europe listening to different storytellers. In the 1800s, they wrote, they came up with their book, Children's and Household Tales, which had a lot of the kind of adapted traditional fairy tales. One was this one, Rotkäppchen. So they were German, that's why it's in German, and it translates as Little Red Cap, and that was obviously, yeah, a kind of more Gothic version of Little Red Riding Hood. We read an extract from it, and the children had to note the Gothic words. And then, because this was kind of coming up to our last lesson in the unit, we had an extended writing task. And I always give options in my lessons. So the children had a go of either rewriting the start of the Little Red Riding Hood story and making it Gothic, or continuing with the diary entry of Rebecca, which we haven't gone through yet. I will show you that in a moment. Or had to go with a description of a Gothic setting. So either of those. Probably the lesson that I enjoyed the most was this one, where we looked at the opening, the first chapter to the novel Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So this book was written in 1938. It was later made into a film. We actually did watch a little extract of the film in the lesson. And we talked through some complex words that the children might come across. We talked about the meanings of them. I'll leave them on there. This is actually not one that was just from Gothic fiction. This was kind of a little review of the dystopian words as well. So there's a little bit of overlap here. And then we had a go of reading the very famous opening chapter. I had some kind of pictures to help children along the way. And they had to sketch out the driveway and label, being very careful to choose some high-level vocabulary. So if you need to read this, please, feel free to pause the video. And this was like a little a still from the film. I made this bigger and we looked at it a bit more in depth. We talked about it being a desolate shell, yet the lights being on, and how we knew that this was actually empty because it's got no roof, etc. Okay, fabulous, amazing start to a book. I really enjoyed teaching this so much. And then the children had a choice to either write down some questions for the narrator, for the character that's saying this, sketch and label Mandalay with high-level vocabulary, or just use some of these new words in sentences. And we did a little short reading comprehension of it as well. Yeah, so that concluded really the Gothic fiction couple of lessons that we did. So if you did that with me, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this review was helpful for you to go over and maybe notice any bits that you missed in the lesson, because it's quite hard, isn't it, in a live lesson to catch everything. So it's always good to review things. Okay, thank you, and I hope to see you in the next unit of work. Bye for now.